Hi, Tiffany. So here we go. Very pretty barn you're at. I hope it's yours. So body position wise, you're a very pretty rider. All of that looks good. You could try tilting a little bit more forward in your hip and your upper body to see if that helps him. With him, as he's walking, he's not overreaching much. And that usually means he's tense in his neck and his back. So right now his head's up, and some of the Tennessee Walkers gait fine like that. But with him right now, we're gonna have to bring his head down farther to help him relax his back. Once that happens and his gait's better, then we'll be able to bring his head back up some. So if you watch his legs, you'll see he's just reaching right into the hoof print of his front foot, and sometimes it's a little bit more behind it. And what we want him to do, because I can see he has it, is to actually relax his back more and reach over that front hoof print. So watch that again. Okay, so okay. So to do that, we got to get him to relax more through his back and his speed wise. If I can get it to go, this is fine for his trail walk. But see, he starts to move better as you're getting his head down there. You're trying to do everything right, and I don't see him open his mouth. I asked about the bit because sometimes the bit can help you, but I think I'd keep trying with this bit. He seems all right with it. Sometimes the Brenda Imus causes too much tongue pressure and the horse starts yanking its head around and putting its tongue out. So if that has happened, then we should try a different bit. So when he put his head down there, then he starts reaching up towards that hoof print a little bit more, so that's better. So here he's walking pretty good, but his head is up, and the reason he's tripping, he's not really paying that much attention. And he's going more towards a flat walk a little bit. If you don't have spurs on, I would put spurs on because I know he cuts in. I saw that on part of the video. And what happens with their head, a lot of times they keep bringing it up, is because they're finding an area to escape the pressure. So with your legs and your hands, you got to really make sure you're holding him and not letting him drift at all. As the footing changes, if there's any parts where it's deeper or more shallow, that usually does cause them to trip. Going downhill, we have to half halt and stay slow as you go faster. Here he's fine, but it makes the Pacey horses even pacier, so we always usually have to stay slow. So I don't see a spur on, so I think that would help you a lot on keeping him out, because if he cuts in, you'll be able to turn your toe out like a frog and hold that spur on him, and he won't want to lean on that spur. It can be a dull spur to start, but we'll see. Okay. So for his flat walk, I would stay a little bit slower just because he's pacey, so we have something to work on for the running walk. Otherwise, he's so pacey that his next speed is that pace. So I would stay just a tiny bit slower than this, not a lot. He's got a nice head shake. He's stepping more up there, but now you're going downhill. That's why he's getting pacey. So you're gonna have to half halt each step going downhill. We wanna bend him more, so a little bit more right rein and right leg, and that'll get him to arc his body more, which may help to get him out of the pace. And then when he does pace, hold him. And if he doesn't come out of that pace quickly, then I want you to spin him in a small circle. The other thing you can do is a quick little serpentine maneuver where you go right, left, and do that every time he paces to make that uncomfortable for him. So see, you're going downhill again, and then he cuts in. So there I would slow down, hold harder. You're being kind of nice. I would immediately shut him down because he's not understanding the difference. So you want to, when I say shut him down, I mean pull hard, hold him until he comes out of it, but it should only be a step or two. If he's doing more than that, it means you got to pull harder. If you pull so hard he stops, that's okay, but don't stop and stay there. Immediately walk off. The other option, if that's not working, is to stop, back up, and restart, because that'll get him out of the pace. And every time he paces, if you do that, he's going to be like, I don't want to keep pacing because she makes me stop and back up, and that's not fun at all. And you're right, he does have a pretty good flat walk. And so he does it well at times where you're soft on the reins and he's doing good. And then he does this, of course, which you know. So I would hold him more. I would keep the hand up. Try not to pull your hand down. You're good with your hands, and then all of a sudden when he does that, you kind of pull it down. Keep your hands where it is and just kind of shut him down. And then as you ask him to go, instead of wiggling that leg around, when you have a spur, if he's cutting in, you can use that spur and then just use your calf to make him go forward. It's fine to get after him like that when he's cutting in. He's a little bit stubborn, but he also looks very calm, and sometimes those two things go together. So there your hands are fine. So say he started messing around now, you just pull your hand back towards your hip. Try not to pull it down because it kind of pulls on the bars of their mouth. And there he has a very nice flat walk. But again, at this point in time, since he doesn't have much more speed after this that he stays in, we might have to stay slower for your flat walk, and then have your running walk be a little bit slow in the beginning. So this is a little bit slower, and for now I think that's a better speed for us to call that his flat walk. His head's shaking up and down, he's doing a nice job, but now it's starting to come up a little bit. And even though you hold him, I'm gonna stop it for a second. Even though you hold him, his head is tucking in, but his head is coming up higher instead of going lower. And that way he inverts his back. And then we're also going downhill a little bit in your arena. Everybody's arena slopes and nobody notices it. But when you get a gaited horse, you're going to notice it a lot, because anything that goes downhill a tiny bit is going to make that horse pacey. Okay, I'm going to restart it. So there again, I would have pulled a lot harder. I think with him, I would stop and back up because he's not getting it. I see fingerprints all over my screen when this thing shuts off because I'm always pointing stuff out to people. Okay. So again, there you were good. Now it starts to go downhill. So at half halt release, push him over off your right leg, half halt release, half halt release. That'll help him get on his back end more. Half halt release, half halt release. Now he's getting faster, but he immediately paces. So I'd stop, back up at least 5 steps. And when I say stop, I mean immediately, like he's on fire. Stop him, back him up, and then immediately walk off again. You don't want to stop and rest because then he's going to think pacing is the answer. Okay, so this is the video Pivo has a seizure. Okay, so with your arena right now, it's going downhill a little bit. So again, going downhill, you got to remain really slow and half halt all the time. Now you might be on the rail for me, so I can, see it out there. But for now, when you're doing a flat walk and a running walk with him, I would keep him in a circle. And I will tell you more at the end in a minute. But I'd stay a little slower for your flat walk. You're going downhill. And so what's happening, you might think his head was down, but you see it's going up. His back's getting inverted. Since it's slanted downhill, he's getting more lateral. So as you go more downhill, he starts getting more pacey. And it's not horrible. It's more like a step pace. So I'm sure it's not very uncomfortable. But he gets in that rhythm and he keeps his feet like that. So even when you start going back uphill, he stays more towards that pace because now he's got his feet kind of locked in that movement. So see, you might think you're doing okay because his head's going up and down, but you'll see you're starting to get a little bounce up and down instead of that forward, back and forth. And his head's tucked in, but it's not relaxed. You'll see his head is pretty high right now. And if he gaited well, that would be fine, but he's not gaiting well. So we want his head lower. We want the top of his head there, down here. We want to kind of level with the top of your hands or the top of your saddle. And his legs are too lateral. So now you're going uphill, but he stayed in that pace because he had that footfall coming down and he just kept it going because he was already in it. So what you wanted to do was go slower. And if he wasn't getting better, stop, back up before it starts going back uphill. And then again, I would keep him in a circle with a bend because it'll It doesn't have to be a real small circle. It can be like 20 meters, which is usually half the arena. But that bend will help to separate his legs more. And then you'll keep repeating that area more. It's usually easier for people in a circle too, because they can tell the terrain better. Okay, so he's still pacey. You'll see you're bouncing up and down. Sorry about the light in the background. Now you might think it's better, but you start going downhill again. His head's way up there. His nose is tucked in, but now his back is tense, and so he just starts pacing again. So you shouldn't have any bounce up and down. It's more of a step pace, so that's why it's not totally uncomfortable, but that's not correct. That's not what we want. So this is after somebody revved their engine. He kind of spooked a little bit, but see, your body position is actually a little bit more forward, and the spooking is causing him to pace. He's just getting anxious, and a lot of horses that are on the pacey side, when they get anxious, that's what happened. But I wanted to stop it here because this body position, when you're riding him around, may help him more because it's going to get a little bit more of your weight on his front end. And it's very confusing to people, but when they're pacey, we want more of your weight on his front end, but we want him to put more of his weight on his back end. Okay, so here we go. So he is gaiting nicely there. You have a nice flat walk. So even though his head's up a little bit, it looks okay. He's not reaching up very much with his legs though. And so he could use his back end better. And then Pivo starts having a seizure. Hopefully they'll help you fix that. So you're fine. Everything's going well. Now it starts to go downhill in your arena. So at some point, stand in the middle of your arena. Really take a good look around. There goes the engine. So, I thought that was the end. There he gets a little bit anxious. His head comes way up. He inverts his back, and then he immediately goes to a pace. So when he does something like that, you could stop and back up, you know, let him see what the object is, and then start over. But he got in all those pacey steps, and what's happening is anytime he paces, he's going to think it's okay. So we immediately have to cut that pace out. We can't keep letting him do that many steps or he's not understanding what we want. You did a good job. You went back over there, you let him look at it. I know he's acting up. That's okay. They see out of the sides of their head, so I always let them turn their head back and forth to look because they see different than us. Hard to watch with this Pivo thing going back and forth. There, he's too tense. You're going downhill. He's getting pacey again. Yep, then you hit a hard pace. See how many steps you went? He's still pacing. So I would have stopped and backed up a long time ago. Yeah, he's still kind of step pacing. He's inverted. And we're still going. So again, he doesn't know that's the wrong thing because we never stopped. Okay, so this is lunging, and this is actually helpful because I see what he does lose. I would get a handy stick, one of those harder, short sticks, because he likes to mess with you. And he's not afraid of that lunging stick. I wouldn't be either because they're so flimsy. So you want to get a nice hard stick. So if he cuts in or starts goofing around, you're going to smack him. I'm going to stop this. Right in the shoulder here, the neck and the shoulder, and that will drive him out. But so he's got a decent walk when he's just loose. And then I saw in here, he cross canters some, but then he actually gets on the correct lead. So he might not be that hard to teach to canter, but I would get the gait first. Sometimes the light lunge lines like you have are okay, and then sometimes they're too light, and when you tug on the horse it doesn't give them the signal enough because they don't feel the pressure in the release because it's such a light line. So you might be better with a rope line with a little bit of weight in it. And if you're going to keep the circle small like you are, which is fine because then you can reach him, you could have a shorter rope like a 16, and you can get those at Half Circle Ranch. They're online. So see how he's cantering there? He was cross cantering. And when they get in the deep footing, these pacey horses scramble. So they'll look like they're panicked and they're out of control, but they kind of are because they can't figure out their legs. That's why he kind of, you know, threw all the sand over there. Now he's on the correct lead. So anytime they're cross cantering, that's usually when they're panicking and they're scrambling around besides them getting in the deep footing. So there, if you pulled him out, pulled him in, that was fine. But if you didn't, I would have wiggled that rope, send him back out, and if he doesn't go out, hit him on the neck and shoulder with that harder whip. Okay, so there he's kind of scrambling because he's on the wrong lead behind. I'm gonna stop it. So when the Pacey horses are on the correct lead, it's a little weird, but their right front and their right hind are gonna almost move together. It's a second apart. But if you don't know what cross cantering looks like, when the right front goes forward, the back right is gonna go backwards. And so they're gonna go away from each other like this. But when he's on the correct lead, it's gonna go like this. But the Pacey horses look different than the regular trotting horses. So wrong lead. Now he switched to the correct lead. See how much calmer he is? So every time he's running around crazy like that, wiggle that rope, try to get him back into a slower gait, and then ask him to canter again. But this size circle working for his canter is good. And then I just try to pick the flattest part of the arena, because if it's on a slope, every time it goes downhill, they're gonna have an issue. But you can see even though he's screwing around with you, he cantered real slow right before he did that. And so that shows you he's gonna be able to have a real slow canter. He's coming to you because he knows once he gets in there, it's difficult for you to get it out. So you got to make it real uncomfortable. When he comes in, if you had that handy stick, you could have been waving it at his chest or actually tap him in his chest pretty hard. And then see how it's hard with that long rope. So I'd get a shorter, heavy rope, and then, you know, you wouldn't have to hold that up. You could have some of that on the ground, but you won't trip because it's shorter. And then you just yank or wiggle that real hard to get him back out there. But you moved instead, and that told your horse, oh, I'm the leader, she's the follower. So he has to move out. You don't move out of his space. It's just a game he's playing. He's like, look at her lunge around me. Now, he's a nice horse because he does it, but then he goes back out. So it's not like it's a huge fight or anything, but he still thinks he's in control. So it'll be a much better relationship if you can get after him some. So there he's pacing. So we see even when he's loose, he can, you know, flat walk, but as soon as you get any speed, he starts pacing on you. So there are things we can do on the ground to help him with his gait, and then under saddle, there's things we can do to help him. Let me see if you show me anything else in here. I'm going to stop for a second until I see anything. Okay, so here you go back to cantering. He cross canters. He tries to get his lead. Then he's like, ah. Okay. Now he's cross cantering again. So his front leg's coming forward. His right hind is coming back. And that's why he starts going so fast and freaking out. So even if you can't tell the leads, anytime he's cantering calmly, like there, he's on the correct lead in the front and the back. Anytime he's spazzing out, it means he lost his lead in the back. And then you just wiggle that rope. He's got your number a little bit. That's okay. You'll work on it and get this. But that other stick will help you a lot, and I'll send you a link to some stuff to help you. Okay, so I stopped it so I don't have a seizure from the pivo. So this is what I would do. I would try to work them from the ground a couple of days a week. I would set up poles in a clock pattern, and I just videotape me doing this with a horse. So I'll send that to you. And I would get surcingle and side reins because it'll help you. And then you'll be able to see what the horse does. And what I would do is get him walking on it. You start with the surcingle, not tight, but with a light pressure, and then over time you'll tighten it up to help him to get his head down. You'll lunge him in the same size circle you had, and you'll see that in my video, and you're gonna put a pole there, 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 and there. So it's gonna be 4 poles, and then you get to just turn, which makes it easy for you. By having him walk over poles, it will help to separate his legs so he's not as pacey. And what I would do is lunge him one direction for 5 minutes, trying to do a flat walk, so a faster walk, and then go the other direction for 5 minutes and time it. You can tell Siri to time it or just do it on your watch. After you do that, since you've just starting this, Then you're going to go 3 minutes each direction, trying to walk a little bit faster. Every time he goes too fast or starts to pace, you wiggle that rope and then ask him to go forward again. This works better when you use one of those handy sticks or a training stick versus the stick you have, because your horse is a little bit stubborn. So you want to be able to poke him with the stick if he comes in too far, or tap him with it if he's not listening to you. But those poles are going to help him use his back more, his stomach muscles more, and teach him to pick up his feet and separate them. So that's also going to help you under saddle. So if you can do that a couple of times a week, that will get you on your way. And then from the ground, a lot of people can tell what they're doing better. But you can also send me a little videotape and I'll tell you if you're doing it right or not. No charge. And then under saddle, what I would do is I would do that arena routine that I have on my website, but I would just do that all at a regular walk. And then it's because that's exercises of circles and leg yielding and all those lateral movements, which help to separate their legs. And then what I would do is go to the flat walk, but I would make a circle in your arena, try to pick the flattest part of your arena, and like a 20-meter circle, so bigger than you're walking right now. And I would throw some poles out there. You can get poles at Home Depot or any place like that. If you don't have poles, riding cavaletti poles are very heavy and expensive, so I prefer garden poles. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna flat walk and you're gonna stay in a circle. And you're gonna flat walk one direction for 5 minutes. Now, if he's staying good and he's not getting pacey, you don't have to go over the poles. So you're gonna go 5 minutes one direction. Say you're going to the left, you wanna keep him bent a little left. So as you're going around the circle, you're gonna have to squeeze on your left rein. You make a tight fist and then release it. And every time you squeeze on that rein, I want you to push a little bit with your leg to get him to bend. And what you'll do is as you're walking around, he'll be bending and you can be very soft with your hands, and then he'll stop not bending and cutting in, and you're gonna squeeze on that left rein as you dig with your leg at the same time, but you gotta hold him so he doesn't speed up. If he's speeding up too much, it means you're using too much leg. And I want you to wear spurs so you can push him out. If he's not moving over at all, it means you gotta turn your toe out and push that spur into him a little bit so he gets more bend. And so usually you have to bend them every other step in the beginning. And so as you're going around that circle, you're going to squeeze, relax on that left rein and use your left leg at the same time. So you're going to do that both directions for 5 minutes, okay? Then he should be warmed up pretty well. Then you'll have poles spread out around here. And you can still spread them out like a clock, but the pacier the horse is, the more poles I put out there, or I make it smaller so you get to the poles quicker. Then what I want you to do is as you're walking around, I want you to, we're gonna go for a running walk, but I want you to start at a flat walk and say the pole was by this guy here. I don't know if it's your husband or who. And then as you're getting closer to the pole, right as you're getting closer to it, I want you to squeeze and ask your horse for more speed. So what should happen is he starts to walk faster, he'll go over the pole. And so instead of going faster and going into a pace, he'll go faster. The pole will help separate his legs to help him to get the running walk. If he's doing well and he keeps going, you can keep that speed and just keep going over the poles. But if he's not, if right after that pole he paces, you're going to immediately pull as hard as you can, slow him down, and try to get back to your flat walk. So you could, if you have to, slow him all the way down, go back to a walk, then get your flat walk, and then speed him up in front of the pole. And you're going to repeat that over and over as you go over the poles. If he's really bad, you're going to stop, back up. They can even back up over poles, and it's a good exercise, but you might have to really get on his case. But if he has to back over a pole every time he paces, he's going to try to figure out really fast what he has to do not to back over those poles. And these guys, the walking horses, especially the calm ones, can stand on the poles, trip on the poles, so you keep sitting back. As you're doing this running walk, though, to help them, you want to be tilted a little bit forward, and you're going to use those half halts to try to keep them in that speed. In the beginning, sometimes you have to half halt every single step, and that means squeeze and release on the rein like this. And every time you do that, you got to keep a little pressure with your legs so they know not to stop. You're going to keep that bend that you got at that flat walk, because bending him will help to separate the legs. The poles will help to separate the legs. Every time he hard paces, stop, back up, or and anytime you back up at least 5 steps. You want to make it visible. But otherwise, you can, stop and then immediately walk off too. But what you're trying to do is change his footfall, because once he gets stuck in that pace, he just keeps pacing. The other thing I would recommend is to teach him to trot over poles, because that will also help to square your horse up. That freaks people out when I say that, but if we can get him to trot when he's loose on the lunge line or over those poles, it's going to help this horse's gait, because then he won't be so pacey. His gait is in between the trot and the pace. So if we get him to trot, it's going to get you there closer and faster, because it's going to help him to use over other muscles, and it'll also help you if a vet comes out anytime for lameness. The fact that you can get your horse to trot will help them a lot. So you'll do that running walk each direction. In the beginning, time it, just do it 3 minutes each side. And then after give it about 2 weeks, go up to 5 minutes each side. It's going to take about 4 to 6 weeks of 4 to 5 days of working him for him to increase his strength and get better, just so you know. So it's going to take about a month. In a month, he should start getting better, and his gait should be smoother. You might have to stick with those poles for a fair amount of time, though. He's 7, so this will happen faster than if it was a 15-year-old set in the pace. So it won't be too hard to get him gaiting nicely. Be very aware of your arena. Anytime it goes downhill, go slower. Anytime it's going uphill, your horse will be able to go faster. If you start riding around the property, the same thing. Anytime it goes downhill, go slower, half halt. You could serpentine, which means wiggle back and forth like this. And go much slower downhill, but you can always pick up more speed going uphill. The other thing is when you lunge him, I get talking, I can't remember if I told you. When you lunge him, we want to use a surcingle and side reins, because we want to help him to get his head down. And again, right now his head is high, which when they're using themselves correctly is okay. But with him, he's inverting his back and his neck, he's tensing it up. And that's how they go towards the pace. So we want to use those side reins to bring his head down, and we want his head about here. So the top of his head is kind of level with his withers. And again, in time, we don't want to ride it down there. He won't have as much head shake. But for now we do, because we want to get him to relax his back and round out more. When you're riding, we need him to bring his head down more. And so I'll send you that video on lateral flexion and vertical flexion, because that's where you teach it. You want to make sure he does that really well at a standstill, and then you'll start to do it at a walk. And if he's not keeping his head down, you're going to have to hold more pressure with your hands, but then block him with your legs, because what the horses usually do is try to go left or right, and people don't realize the horse is going through their leg. If you hold him tight enough, like in the video I just posted on Honeybee, because she used to do the same thing, if you hold her tight enough, they won't go anywhere. They'll just go, I can't go to the right, I can't go to the left, I can't go up because she's got pressure, so I'm going to bring my head down. And then when he does that, you release, and then you're going to do that over and over again. And so that way, it'll get his head down, and as you're going over those poles, he'll start using his abdomen and his back more correctly. If any of this doesn't make sense, I'm going to send you a bunch of links that'll hopefully give you some guidance.